The sun was barely rising over the hills, casting long shadows across the farmer's field. But as he stepped out for his morning chores, something caught his eye. A large, furry figure digging frantically in the dirt near his barn. It was a bear. He froze. A wild bear was on his property. Was it dangerous? What could it be after? The farmer stood still, his heart pounding in his chest, watching as the bear dug deeper and deeper into the soil. But then, the unthinkable happened. When he looked closer, he was speechless. What the bear uncovered was something he never expected. The farmer, Henry Carter, had lived on this land for over 20 years. His farm was small but peaceful, surrounded by dense woods and rolling fields. He had seen plenty of wildlife, deer, foxes, even the occasional wolf, but never a bear this close to his home. That morning, everything had started like any other day. He had woken up early, brewed his coffee, and stepped outside to feed his animals. The air was crisp and cool, the sky just beginning to lighten. But then, he heard something strange. At first, it was just the sound of rustling dirt. But then came the low, heavy grunts of an animal. Something big. Turning his head toward the barn, he saw it. A massive brown bear, its claws furiously tearing at the ground. The animal was so focused on its task that it didn't even notice him standing there. Henry's first thought was fear. What if the bear turned aggressive? Should he grab his rifle? His dog, Max, stood beside him, growling low, his ears pinned back. But something felt different. The bear wasn't trying to attack, nor was it searching for food in the usual way. Its movements were desperate, almost frantic. What could it be digging for? Henry took a deep breath, tightening his grip on the wooden shovel resting against the barn. He had to find out. Slowly, cautiously, he stepped closer. Henry's heart raced in his chest as he took another cautious step forward, his boots crunching softly on the frosty ground. Max, his loyal dog, kept close, his eyes wide with uncertainty. Henry could feel the tension rising between them. Max didn't like this one bit. The bear continued to dig furiously, its claws moving with a frantic rhythm that made Henry's stomach twist. Every time the bear plunged its paws into the earth, dirt and leaves flew up in all directions. But it wasn't the typical behavior of an animal searching for food or shelter. It was like the bear was trying to uncover something hidden, something it needed. Henry stopped for a moment, the cold air biting at his skin. He felt torn. Should he turn around and get help? Call animal control? But what if it was too late? The bear might have been on the verge of finding something important, something that could mean danger for them both. What was it after? Henry wondered. Could it be something dangerous? A hidden den? Or worse, was the bear just acting out of desperation? Max's low growl pulled him out of his thoughts. The dogs first stood on end, and Henry could sense his unease. He took a deep breath and took another step forward, his eyes fixed on the bear's movements. The bear's head jerked up suddenly, its nose twitching as if it had just sensed Henry's presence. For a brief moment, their eyes locked, dark, intelligent eyes that stared at him with an almost curious intensity. Henry froze. He didn't dare move, not even a muscle. Was the bear going to charge? Was this the moment when it would turn aggressive? The bear's breathing was heavy and uneven, and it seemed to weigh its options. For what felt like an eternity, they stood there in silence. But then, as if deciding that Henry wasn't a threat, the bear slowly returned to its task, resuming its frantic digging as if nothing had happened. Henry exhaled slowly, his nerves finally beginning to settle. But the questions only grew louder in his mind. What was going on? As he moved even closer now, he could see something glinting faintly beneath the dirt, the hint of something metallic. It caught the light in a strange way. His curiosity overcame his hesitation, and he moved forward again, kneeling down to get a better look. And then, with a final dig, the bear paused. A faint, soft cry pierced the air. It wasn't the growl of the bear, but something much softer. Henry's heart skipped a beat. His gaze snapped back to the hole in the ground. Henry's eyes widened as the bear stepped back from the hole, its nose twitching rapidly. The soft cry echoed again, barely audible but unmistakable. It wasn't the sound of something threatening. It was a cry of distress, a plea for help. Heart pounding, Henry inched closer, now kneeling beside the hole. He tried to steady his breath, but it came in quick bursts as the strange scene before him began to unfold. The earth had been dug out so deeply, It looked as if the bear had been searching for something buried for days, perhaps weeks. But what could it be? The metallic object he had glimpsed earlier was now clearer, a faint shimmer beneath the dirt. As the bear stepped aside, Henry reached down and gently brushed the loose soil away with his hands, revealing more of the object. It wasn't metal at all. It was a small wooden box, intricately carved and weathered with age. But just as Henry reached for it, the bear let out a deep, low growl, not of warning, but of concern. It wasn't backing away. It was guarding the box, protecting it as if it held something precious. Henry froze, unsure what to do. The bear's eyes flicked from the box to him, then back to the earth. It was like the bear was silently asking, "Will you help me?" A split-second decision. Henry's curiosity, his compassion for the animal, and his growing sense of unease pushed him forward. With one careful motion, he brushed the rest of the dirt away, revealing the entire box. The intricate carvings on the surface looked almost ancient, symbols that were unfamiliar to him, but clearly meaningful. But what really caught his attention was what lay beside the box. A tiny, trembling bear cub, its fur matted and muddy, its body weak and fragile. Henry's breath caught in his throat. The bear wasn't after some hidden treasure. It had been digging for its cub, its lost baby, buried beneath the earth, perhaps after a natural disaster, a storm, or even a predator attack. The bear had been trying to save its own child, desperate and frantic to dig it free for whatever had trapped it. The cub's tiny body trembled with each breath, but it was alive. Henry's heart softened as he realized the truth. The bear wasn't just a wild animal searching for food. It had been searching for its family. Henry's hands shook as he gently reached out, placing his hand on the cub's small, fragile body. It didn't flinch, it trusted him. At that moment, everything changed. Henry wasn't just a farmer anymore. He was a witness to something deeper, something wild and pure, far beyond the surface of this quiet, rural farm. The connection between the bear and its cub was a reminder that love, in all its forms, could push animals to do the unthinkable. Henry sat back on his heels, his mind racing as he looked at the tiny bear cub nestled in the dirt. Its fur was damp and sticky, its tiny body barely moving. He could feel the bear mother's gaze on him, sharp and intense, as if she was silently asking, "Can you save my baby?" The farmer's heart thudded in his chest. He had never been faced with a situation like this before. He wasn't an animal expert, let alone someone who had ever dealt with wild animals in need of rescue. But the cub, it was just so helpless, so vulnerable. Without thinking, Henry's hand reached for his jacket pocket, pulling out his phone. His fingers trembled as he dialed the local wildlife rescue service. The phone rang a few times before a voice finally answered. "Wildlife rescue. How can I help you?" Henry's voice was urgent but calm. "I need help. There's a bear on my property, and it's got a cub. The cub's hurt, and I don't know what to do." The person on the other end asked a few quick questions, and Henry gave as much detail as he could. He was instructed to keep his distance from the bear and cub, as mother bears could be unpredictable, especially when their young were involved. "Do not try to move the cub," they said. The professionals would arrive soon, but it would take some time. Henry ended the call and stood there for a moment, staring at the cub in his hands. The bear mother stood just a few feet away, waiting. Her eyes never left him. It was as if she could sense his uncertainty, but she had no choice but to trust him, to wait for him to act. He turned to Max, who was now sitting at his side, the tension in the dog's stance telling Henry that even he understood the gravity of the situation. Max's usual bark was gone. Now he was just quietly observant. Henry's eyes shifted back to the cub. He could hear its soft, weak breath, its tiny form so fragile against the cold morning. It was clear the cub needed warmth, something to comfort it. Without thinking, he carefully wrapped the little bear in the bottom of his shirt, creating a makeshift blanket. His heart ached as he gently cradled the cub, its tiny body still trembling in his hands. Minutes felt like hours as Henry waited for the wildlife team to arrive. Every second stretched out, the uncertainty gnawing at him. Would they be able to save the cub? Would the mother bear stay calm long enough for the rescue to happen? The sound of helicopter blades grew louder in the distance, and Henry's breath caught in his throat. The rescue team was close. The helicopter hovered above the farm, sending gusts of wind through the trees as it prepared to land in a nearby field. Henry's attention snapped back to the mother bear. She had been standing still, but now she was slowly approaching, her heavy paws pressing into the earth with each step. Henry could feel the weight of her stare on him. She was still cautious, but it seemed like the time had come for her to trust him completely. The helicopter's blades chopped through the air, the noise overwhelming as the rescue team touched down in the field nearby. Henry stood still, his heart still racing as he held the tiny bear cub in his arms, its fur trembling against the warmth of his body. The mother bear, watching him from a distance, seemed to relax, sensing that help had finally arrived. She stood still, her watchful eyes never leaving her cub. The wildlife rescue team jumped out of the helicopter, moving swiftly towards Henry. A woman, tall and experienced-looking, approached first. Her voice was calm but firm. "Is that the cub?" she asked, pointing toward the trembling bear in Henry's arms. Henry nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes, the bear. The mother dug this cub up. It was buried. I don't know what happened, but it's hurt." The woman nodded and motioned for her team to prepare a stretcher. "We'll take it from here. You did well by staying calm and getting help. You did the right thing." As the team gently transferred the cub to the stretcher, Henry couldn't help but feel a wave of relief wash over him. The professionals would do their job. They would know how to care for the cub, and hopefully, it would survive. But for a moment, he couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of awe and wonder at what had just transpired. The bear mother, sensing the loss of her baby, took a few hesitant steps forward. The team kept their distance, knowing that the mother would be far too protective of her cub to allow anyone too close. She sniffed the air and let out a low grunt, then turned and disappeared back into the woods, likely to continue her search for a new den or safe place to stay. Henry watched as the wildlife team prepared to leave with the cub, knowing they would do everything they could help it. As the helicopter blades whirred back to life and the team lifted off the ground, Henry stood there in the morning silence, reflecting on everything that had just happened. It was one of those moments in life when everything slows down, the world around you fades away, and you're left with a single, powerful thought: the connection between humans and animals. He had spent most of his life on this farm, working the land, tending to his crops, and watching wildlife pass through his fields. But this was something different, something much deeper than just a farmer seeing an animal on his land. This was a moment of pure vulnerability, trust, and survival. Henry thought back to how the bear mother had looked at him, how she had watched him with those dark eyes, silently pleading for help. She had trusted him, even though he was a stranger. And in that moment, Henry realized that maybe we're all just creatures in the same world, doing our best to survive, to protect the ones we love. As the helicopter disappeared into the distance, Henry stood alone in the yard, the first rays of the sun touching the earth. The barn, the fields, the woods, it all seemed just a little more meaningful now, a little more connected. As Henry stood in his yard, watching the sun rise over the treetops, he knew this was a moment he would never forget. He had always respected nature, but today, he had witnessed something truly extraordinary. A mother bear's relentless fight to save her child, and an unspoken trust between man and animal. This story is a reminder that the wild is not just about survival. It's about love, instinct, and the deep connections we share with the creatures around us. Even in the most unexpected moments, kindness and courage can change lives. Bareface, what do you think about this incredible story? Have you ever witnessed something amazing in nature? Share your thoughts in the comments. Fire if you love heartwarming animal rescue stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another incredible tale.